This podcast does not provide medical advice. The information included but not limited to any videos, text, graphics, image materials, or any programs or consultations contained within this podcast are for information purposes only. The podcast does not constitute providing medical advice or professional services. It does not constitute a patient-physician relationship. If you have medical concerns, please seek out your private physician, or if you feel you have a medical emergency, please contact 911. Welcome to Kars Koaching, the podcast where we combine our love for cars, medicine, and self-development to get you to the life that you deserve. Hey guys, Dr. K, welcome back to another podcast of Kars Koaching, where we take our love for cars, medicine, as well as self-development and have a little bit of fun. Today I'm actually honored because we have a well-established social media star that we've known for a while now. So Shmee is with us today. Tim, thanks so much for joining us today for the podcast. It's truly a pleasure. It's good seeing you again, and I know you just flew in, so I appreciate you making the time to spend some time with us. So
it's an absolute pleasure. Great to be here with you, as you say, straight off the plane from the UK. So it's kind of late on my body clock right now, sometime in the early hours of the morning, but we rock and roll. We're here. It's good to come and see you guys. Obviously, first time we met was about 5 years ago now. Yeah,
it was. Yeah, we picked you up from the airport.
Yep.
And that was when you were in the States with the GT, with the Ford GT.
Absolutely.
And just as luck would happen, that's when we were getting the Pista. And the Pista was on the same truck, and we had a mutual friend that connected us and said, hey, Shmee's GT is going to be on the same truck. Did you want to meet him? And that's
the
how
the coincidence was quite incredible. I'd been in Detroit. Of course, being here with the Ford GT, I had to go and visit the hometown of Ford, right?
Right.
And sent the car over here because it was going to be flying out of O'Hare to get it back to the UK. And then we figured that you were taking delivery of your brand new Pista that just arrived in the country, and the same truck that had come from, I think, the port in New Jersey bringing your car over had picked up my car in Detroit, and they both came off and were unloaded together here.
Yeah, and you unloaded your car actually at the Ferrari dealership, and we had purchased, you did the video of 3 Ferraris in one day.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that was fun. And then we were just reminiscing on how we got, not in trouble per se, but people were blowing that out of proportion because we got some good rolling shots of those cars, and people were accusing us of shutting down the highway. So,
hey, memories.
Yeah, no, that was great. But no, it's great to have you here, and tell the audience a little bit about yourself, and not in detail, as you said it when we were talking. You're so well established. A lot of people know the story, and they know where everything actually came from. But a little bit of how you actually got to this point. You could do the Cliff Notes version, or you could do War and Peace, whatever you feel like you want to do.
It's funny thinking back because about 15 years ago, just shy of 15 years ago, was when I made my first YouTube video. And you have to remember, in that era, YouTube was so different to what we know of it now. Right, everybody knows now that you could grow something to be an empire like Mr. Beast. You can create content that gets viewed by millions and millions of people, and it's monetized. You can form a business off it. But back then, it was literally YouTube. So for me, it was like enjoying making videos. Right. I enjoyed cars. I enjoyed videos. I enjoyed sharing the idea of social media and how was this forming. I mean, the term social media didn't really exist as we know it now. So it was really just trial and error, and I made hundreds upon hundreds, if not thousands, of videos of cars that I stuck online with no real goal, no objective, and of course it's grown over time, and it's been quite a fun evolution because at that time I had a proper job, let's say, a serious job working in an office, and it was very much a hobby, but already over 10 years ago I became, let's say, a full-time YouTuber and went at it and started going to more events, creating more content, having a structure and a schedule, to what I was publishing. And this landscape has evolved so much over the time since. And it fascinates me from the, I want to say, business and entrepreneurial side, trying to understand how it all works, because it's very easy to look in from the outside and say, hey, you've got to be creative and make an amazing video. But that is a small portion of the big puzzle. Because the big puzzle is, how do you set up exclusive opportunities? How do you publish content in the best possible way? How do you reach a new audience? How do you engage with them? How do you get everybody part of it? So I've been I'm almost like the grandfather of car YouTube because I started so early in the game.
Right.
But I've kind of adapted and learned as it's gone. And I've been very consistent with it all the way through. So I've had some amazing opportunities and cars I've driven and people I've met and places and things. And I often kind of have to pinch myself and say, did that actually happen? Did we really do that? So I guess it's gone from a kid without a plan running around London with a camera in his hand,
right,
to now having something in the region of 10 million followers. My YouTube channel's done over 1 billion views. These days, a good month is 100 million plus views across short form content and social media. So sharing what I love, which is cars, the supercar luxury automotive world, and trying to have the best possible time and inspire people and educate people, entertain people, and do something that's immensely positive, passionate.
When was, that's interesting, because I know we've talked numerous times, and you said it now, that you didn't start this out as a business. There's some people that actually look at what's going on now in social media and say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do a channel, and they have their business plan and they're doing it. And for you, it was kind of organic. You started doing certain things and all of a sudden you took off. When was it where you said, hey, you know what? I think this actually is going to work, and I'm going to divest from what I'm doing that we call a real job, right? And actually do this. Although people don't understand how much work you actually put in, you'd probably be a lot better off having a real job because you'd be a lot less stressed. But what kind of tipped that and said, hey, you know what? I'm going in full steam here.
You're completely true. I think if a lot of people realized what it takes to create the amount of content that we do through the Shmee150 platforms and to publish it in the way we do, from the travel to the sheer amount of time I have to spend learning about cars, right? I can't shoot the videos if I don't know what I'm talking about.
I'm doing okay doing that. No, I'm teasing.
It takes time. And then as your business grows, there's all the HR stuff, the accounting stuff, the really boring stuff, which no one sees on a video,
right,
but you still have to do it because you're still running a business. But if we rewind back, the beginning was all really like just for fun. It was so much the infancy. When I started uploading YouTube videos, and this amazes me, Instagram didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
No, it didn't. It literally wasn't even there. And to think about where that would go, mobile phones, when I first started sharing pictures and things of cars, mobile phones didn't have cameras.
Right.
And of course, to a younger generation now who use TikTok every 5 seconds, that's like the idea of that is almost incomprehensible. If you wanted to take a photo, you had to grab a camera. If you wanted to make a video, when I started making videos, I had mini DV tapes. It wasn't digital.
Right.
It was a tape that you ripped and then edited the video. With social media, everything became digital. So early 2010s, obviously, that changed a lot. But what I think happened for me was the beginning, it was very much my hobby. Shooting videos, going to a car event at the weekend and walking around a car and making a little video was something I did there was no gain, there was no financial reward for doing so. And gradually, fast forward a year or two, and I've made my first hundreds of videos. The YouTube Partner Program, as it was known back then, was introduced. And I remember getting super excited for what this was going to mean and how incredible it was going to be. And, the first month's paycheck arrived, 60 cents. Yeah. I remember it well, 60 cents. And I was like, okay, maybe I got a little optimistic there.
You got to hold out for $1.20. Yeah, you're only at 60 cents.
But it kind of went a little bit from there. And what became the moment for me of, wait a minute, hold on, this could be something, was 3 years later. 3 years later of making a video every single day.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It was a long time later when, it started to become certainly not enough to leave my job. It wasn't as much money as I would earn in my normal job, but it was enough money that I was like, there could be something here. There could be something here. And I was super lucky. I worked in a financial business in the city of London, and the biggest bit of luck that I ever had was the fact that the co-founder and CEO of my company was into cars. So he was super into what I was doing.
Right.
And very, very open to me trying things to see, what would be possible. So he actually made it possible for me to go from a 5-day working week to a 4-day working week to a 3-day working week.
That was good.
So the evolution of dropping out of a normal office job into making videos happened over a year and a half. It didn't happen kind of overnight. And then when it had fully happened and I had gone full time as a YouTuber, and this, I think everybody kind of faces with this, you make that decision when the times are good, and then shortly thereafter you have times that aren't so good.
Right.
And then it was almost 9 months of maybe this was a really bad idea, and maybe I should have stayed in employment and enjoyed the kind of easier side of that. But then I could tell you it was the Geneva Motor Show one year came around. I made a lot of videos, got them out very fast, and from there it just started going up and up and up and up and all the way to where it is now.
I think I asked you the first time when we were together, what did your parents think about you being a YouTuber? And you had said, I remember, it was Christmas. And I think it was the Geneva Auto Show was coming at that time. And you said, I'm going to just do one more and see how it goes or something along those lines.
It was exactly that. It was sitting with the family at Christmas time, and it was the kind of, maybe it's time to apply for another job and see what I can do, on a personal level. This is fun, but is this a career? And yeah, like you say, the Geneva Motor Show would come 2 months later, and it was that year was, and one of my proud moments of this, it was when the LaFerrari was introduced.
Okay.
And obviously it's not every day that Ferrari introduce a new hypercar. I mean, that was the last one. It was a decade ago. And my, I guess, claim to fame of it was that when they pulled the covers off and I filmed my video of the reveal moment and Luca di Montezemolo revealing the car at the time, I then ran to the media studio where I'd left my laptop and I had pre-planned all the files and text and everything I would need, dumped in the files, got it out on YouTube about 45 minutes later. And that was before Ferrari had even published anything themselves of the LaFerrari. Wow. Yeah. So if you could to this day search on YouTube for LaFerrari by oldest first and go all the way back, my video was the first video on YouTube about the LaFerrari. Yeah.
See, but you had that plan, so
yeah.
So you knew,
and that was a big moment. That was a big moment that kind of, like I say, kick-started a lot of views over then, and I realized how to create content that was more engaging to a viewer. I realized how to make it more bringing them along on a story, not just here are some pretty clips of a car or something like that. More like, come with me to the Geneva Motor Show and let me show you this new car.
Right.
And that was a big style change, and more of vlogging, really. Vlogging in the car world didn't exist then.
Right. Everything was more just pictures or videos and a little bit of background.
Yeah, perhaps some races or track days or that kind of thing. But nobody at that stage was literally making what you know now as a video diary, a kind of a piece where you're specifically building a storyline about it, taking somebody through a journey of cars. I mean, it just didn't exist.
Yeah. You said something that's very interesting. You said you were 3 years making videos. And I think that's important for people to understand. There's that saying, right? It took me 10 years to become an overnight success, right? Yes. And yes. That's the catch. There's so much work that goes into this. And I've always been in awe. We've seen each other maybe 4 or 5 times, and some of those times we were actually filming, whether it was our stuff or somebody else's, and there's a lot of work that goes behind that. Everybody seems to think, hey, you point a camera, you say a couple of things, and all of a sudden you're going to be successful, and I think they miss the point. There's a lot of hard work that goes into it. Yeah.
I think this is kind of the same with anybody in any industry. If you're looking at Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or Bill Gates or you name it, you see the success now. Right. But you don't see what they had to do to get there. There are all these stories of working in a garage and this kind of thing, and they're true.
Right.
For many years, like you say, people will have been working away at their idea, taking a risk. It could have completely failed, and you'd never know who they were or what they did. But you know of them because it paid off. And I think what's interesting about the social media world is you have an almost more extreme, more volatile version of that because you're so much in the public eye through the fact that you're sharing stuff that features your face.
Right.
People are literally seeing you; they see it happen. If you follow my YouTube channel, it's funny because it's all there. Everything stays right. You can go back and see the videos I made in 2010 of me with my BMW 1 Series back then.
Right.
It's quite hilarious. Like the first video I ever talked to camera is horrific to watch because it wasn't great, but it's almost like a heightened sensitivity to it. But I think with almost anybody who does something that becomes a success, they had to be incredibly enthusiastic about it and work very hard at it. In any industry, in any genre, whether it's medical, legal, being a founder of a business, a sports person, to be at the top of your game, you have to work so hard at it to get there.
No, I agree, and I think people miss that point. And the other thing is it's the consistency and the self-discipline that you have. I know, what was 2017? You did every single day and didn't miss a day, right?
There have been multiple years where I've done every single year. Every single
2017
day
was the
year.
first time you set the goal, though, right?
The first time I set the goal and made sure I did it all 365 days every day. Actually, earlier this year, for the second time, caught the dreaded COVID and had a 3-day gap without videos. And that 3-day gap without uploading a video was the longest period I've had in as long as I can remember. More than 10 years, more than a decade. That is the longest period I've ever gone without videos. And that was a major kind of mind thing to get over, the kind of, wait a second, because, since I started uploading regularly in January 2010, I've done, even to this day, on average, more than one video per day since then. And that doesn't include the rise of short form now, because we publish 4 YouTube videos a week at least, and then there's a short form video that goes out on YouTube Shorts and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and everything else, and then re-edits of all the content. So there's a lot of stuff going out. And that's the kind of other thing, isn't it? There's a lot of stuff going on. One of the amazing things with social media, though, is that for everybody, they gravitate towards something they really enjoy. And that's the coolest thing about it, because it's the cliched phrase of, if you enjoy what you do, you never work a day in your life. But it's so completely true in this industry, because you can grind away at something you love and pull it in that direction. And if it works, if you're successful at it, you keep doing what you did because you loved it anyway. Like it just keeps going through.
How do you... Your life is kind of an open book. Well, not really an open book, but people do see you every day, right? And that's a large portion of what you do on a daily basis. And sometimes from the social media perspective, because you're under the microscope, things may not go as well as they would be planned to go. And you get either negative comments or they get on the ban. How do you deal with that? How do you insulate yourself so that you go back tomorrow? Or has there been a time where you did something that you thought was going to turn out one way and turned out completely the opposite way, and it made you kind of think, maybe I'm going to go back to the electronics world?
I was going to say, life is great at throwing curveballs at you everywhere. I mean, even just on a very basic level, traveling to places, flights get cancelled. The weather is nasty. Things happen that stop you filming. Or working with cars, car doesn't work.
Right.
What do you do if you travel somewhere to film a car and it's not running?
Yeah.
You're
stuck,
that's one side of it. Of course, you're trying to balance a very fine line with content of trying to make it really appealing for a viewer, but not making it clickbait.
Right.
That clickbait negative type vibe that it gives off of you're misleading your audience. And it's a very fine line sometimes to find, and for sure I've accidentally crossed it at some point. And you try and edit a title, and it's amazing how you could shoot the same 30-minute video and giving it one of two different titles can have a completely different perception to the viewer. And it's very difficult because when you're uploading so much content, the amount of captions we come up with for what we're sharing, I mean, we must be sharing 10 content things a day. So that means 10 times we have to come up with a title or a piece of wording. And if you extrapolate that out, we're talking 3,500 a year, right?
Right, yeah.
So eventually one of them you're going to get slightly wrong.
Right.
Just because you've written it in a rush, you haven't thought about it, and you've pressed the wrong side of that clickbait line. So that's always the thing that I guess affects me the most, because I don't intend to do it, but it really upsets viewers when you do.
Right.
And that's a bit of a challenge. There are so many things you learn, though, and you learn to do better, and you have to be quick at responding. We often say with my team that our industry is one that really works in seconds and minutes. It's not like an email chain in a corporate environment where it takes a week or a month to get an answer about something. We sometimes have something happens, and within 60 seconds we've got to have worked it out.
Right.
Straight on the phone, fix it, go. And that's just something you learn and you get used to, and you have to manage the stress of that as well. I think that's quite a big thing, because I'll often have particular obligations, contractual things with different brands we're working with, and then you're supposed to be at this event, but your flight to that event gets cancelled, but the contract says you have to be there. You could go into a complete panic and meltdown and worry about it, But at the end of the day, that's not going to get you anywhere.
Right.
You have to really keep level-headed and say, right, how are we going to fix this? What's the solution? Do we need to rent a car? Is there another route? Can I get to a different airport and catch a flight? I actually had this once out of Frankfurt Airport in Germany to get to an event with Mercedes that they were hosting, and my flight got cancelled. And I was like, okay, Frankfurt Airport, there's a big train station here. What can we do? Looked at the train schedule. There's a train that leaves in I can't remember how long it was, but it wasn't long.
Right.
That could get me there about 3 hours quicker than the next flight. Sprint to the train station, get a ticket, get on the train, get to the event. Sure, I'm an hour late, but I'm an hour late, whereas somebody else who was on the same flight misses it completely.
Right.
I think you have to be very level-headed in those situations, and you learn to do it. You learn to manage that stress, and you learn to figure it out. And again, as I mentioned, it's the same thing as running a business, right? You have HR things to deal with. You have employees at the end of the day that you're responsible for. Lots of financial elements. As any business grows, so does your monthly expenditure. So does the commitment that you have. It's a very fun process, but it's certainly one where you have to learn a lot.
No, and it obviously for you to do it as much and as long as you've been doing it, the passion is obviously has to be there, because I think we were talking. So out of the year, how many days are you actually home? It's not a large amount of time.
No. It varies, because what I try and do more now, so around 2018, 2019, I was hopping on a plane far too often. It was amazing because within a calendar year, I'd go to all 6 inhabited continents.
Right.
It's amazing to travel everywhere. But it was definitely to the extent of just flying across the world for a day and then back is just not something I couldn't really cope with it again. So what I try and do now is more like blocks of time in locations. So a month around Europe, a month in the US, that type of thing. So it means slightly less of the I'm home for a night off again, home for 2 nights off again,
right,
type thing. So normally when we end up at home, it's at least a week at home.
Yeah, no, because I
amazing.
think in 2019, I think you were telling something 245 days or something.
In 2019,
days?
I think in 2019 maybe I spent slightly less than 100 days of the year at home, which was silly, to be honest. Now it's probably a significant chunk more. I've created a space at home to have my own garage with my cars, with our desks, with my team based in the same office, which gives more reason to stay at home because it's a nice place to be. So we come up with more content ideas at home as well. Still a lot of travel, and I love coming up with new ideas. So this winter we went on a nearly 10,000 mile road trip in my AMG GT Black Series all around Europe, 42 nights on the road.
Wow.
But we went to, I think, 10 or 11 different countries. We drove it all the way down to Italy, all the way up to the Arctic Circle. It's over 2,000 miles between them.
I was joking. You drive like my son. I think we have got quite a few. Those are 2 cars that we actually have in common, right?
They
the
are
SLS and the AMG GT.
The Black Series cars.
Yeah.
Great car with a purpose. Not something a normal person would do.
No.
Spending 6 weeks on the road in a Nürburgring record-setting supercar.
Right.
But I love it, and I love being able to, I think, live the dreams that so many petrol heads have and share that with people and try and give an honest view of what that experience is like. We had the tagline for the Shmee150 channel many years ago, living the supercar dream. And I still feel very much like I'm living the supercar dream. It's that, will I one day realize this never actually happened? But trying to bring together some of those experiences that many people who love the same kinds of cars that I love would love to experience.
Yeah.
And try and show that in the most organic way. That's always the goal with it. It's not overly scripted. It's not overly staged. For sure, there's the learning about the car and there's the prepping all the equipment to make sure the batteries are all charged, which takes far longer than people expect. But it's the making it happen and just, here it is. This is what it was like. This is what happened.
Out of all of the, and like we say, you've been doing this for a long time, so you're constantly putting out car content. Was there one trip that you thought would just be absolutely fantastic and you were excited about the entire thing and it just didn't live up to its hype? You don't have to give out names.
No, it's an interesting question. I can think of many where I was incredibly excited for something and it was absolutely living up to expectations. has there ever been anything that wasn't what I expected?
Besides coming to visit us, I mean, is there anything else?
I don't think so, because at the end of the day, most of what I'm filming are cars that are, just fantasy machines.
Right.
They're things that are absolutely incredible, marvels of engineering, things that captivate your emotions. The sound, the vibrations, the noise, the visual design of these high-end cars, right? So it'd be very hard for an experience involving a very cool car to not be special. So I have to be honest, nothing immediately springs to mind as that didn't work. I mean, for sure there are times when I've gone to make videos knowing that I'm just making the video because I think the video will be successful more than that I personally was interested in that moment.
Right.
I mean, that's very few and far between, but there have been times when I just wanted to stay at home, but there was something that I knew would be a successful video. So it's like, okay, we'll get on a plane, let's go and do it, get it done. But that's work, right? You're not supposed to enjoy every second.
No. Now, getting started in cars, obviously you started at a relatively early age, and I think you said, your dad, BMWs, Mercedes, things of that nature. When did it hit where you said, this is what I'm going to do?
It's actually quite a funny story that's different to what I think people would expect. So when I was a young kid, of course I was shouting out the name of every car that we'd see on the road, single digit age. I don't mean to interrupt. My son as well. As long as the car cost over $50,000, he could not identify anything less than. I would call out. So the main thing for me was calling out the brands. It'd be that's a Mercedes, that's a Nissan, that's just like shouting out every brand of car, and almost, I guess, becoming a car spotter very young. But I was always into cars. I remember doing my studies at school. So school for us is, probably I'm talking 16 years old, 17 years old, just about to get my first car, and about to have the freedom of traveling. And I was chatting with my best friend in class, and it's like, one day we're going to have a Lamborghini and drive on the Gumball 3000. Right. That was the kind of like, I'm going to make this happen somehow. But it's that kind of, I don't know if that's actually going to happen, but I'm dreaming of that happening. And all the way up to that point, I'd been participating on forums online, talking about cars, and always fascinated by statistics, metrics, performance. So every time a new Ferrari or a Lamborghini would come out, looking at what its 0 to 60 time was, and just the evolution of technology and the engineering that's behind them. I think the growth of my specific YouTube channel about cars was almost, well, firstly, it wasn't planned. It wasn't intended from the beginning, but it was almost a means to running a business as well. So at the start, it was, I like cars and I'm enjoying making videos of cars. I wonder if I can turn this into something more type thing, rather than I have to do a job or a business that specifically is about cars. I think at that stage of life, when I started taking photos before, because I'd been taking still photos with a point and shoot camera that I used to carry with me for a couple of years before starting YouTube videos. And at that point, it was very much just appreciating the fact that I was in central London, and often you would see amazing things around. Right. I think it's pretty famous that lots of cars from the Middle East would come over in the summer. You'd regularly see the world's most expensive cars just parading the streets. So that was almost an opportunity too good not to share. Right. So I kind of got into it as this. Now, I uploaded my first video, and the comments would come in from people in the US or in Australia or somewhere around the world, and this community and engagement and storyline, and the cars were kind of the means to that. The cars were the means to the social conversations about a topic that you all enjoy, and then also enjoying the fact that it created views, it created something happening without knowing what that was.
Right.
So cars have clearly been in my blood from a young age. And I remember being kind of 13, 14, and my dad had an E46 M3. It was like really special car, right? Back at the time when it was new, and I would park it in the driveway. That would be my job as a young teenager. And that kind of thing from there, it just grows with you, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it does. And it's funny because it'll catch you at an early age and then it just keeps going. And I still hear the passion in your voice when you talk about that and going back to the other times, and that's kind of hard to do for as long as you do it, and how much of the day it actually encompasses for you. So it definitely has to be a true passion. Otherwise you eventually kind of step away.
Definitely. I hear quite a few people asking that, like, how do I keep the passion for what I do? Like, how do I still get excited by these things? I know it sounds incredibly spoiled to say, but when you've been lucky to drive 20 Paganis, how do you still get excited about driving a Pagani? And the answer is because I absolutely love it. Like, I'm not about to stop. I think if I was going to stop, that would have faded out a while ago. But I also appreciate how, these kinds of opportunities, how many people would give anything for that. So it's not even just the opportunity myself to drive it. It's knowing how fortunate I am to be in that position to do so.
And then share it with others.
Exactly. And that's one of the most amazing things. That's really where my channel started picking up in 2013-14, was when I made videos sharing what it's like to own a car like an Audi R8 or a McLaren 12C, because at that period, anybody who had a car like that, the status quo was that you wouldn't really share it or show it, right? You kept that away from other people because there was potentially almost a negative connotation of it. And this is quite a different, almost cultural thing between Europe and the US as well, just in terms of how expensive assets like cars here are more inspirational, whereas in Europe they can create more hostility. Being very, very general with it. But at that time, nobody who owned a McLaren 12C would upload a video of, here's how you do this with this car, or here's what it's like to take this car on a road trip. So that was one of the fascinations that the audience picked up on with the channel, right? Kind of being at the front of that. Whereas it's funny to look now, because pretty much anybody who buys a new Lambo now is going to be sharing it online. Like, what's the percentage of people that don't?
Everybody.
It's tiny.
Whether they bought it or not, they might be sharing it, right? That's the catch.
Exactly.
Everybody should have a Lambo in their garage. In terms of your team, when did your team grow? When did you because everybody thinks it's just you, it's just Tim, it's just Shmee that's behind the camera, but actually you have a team that helps you out. But that wasn't like that from the beginning, obviously. So there's a stair-step effect, I imagine.
It's been like that for longer than people realize. So we intentionally cultivate this content that feels very relatable. So videos, even to this day, are supposed to be filmed in a way that it's kind of like your friend who's made a video and has sent it to you. So by that I mean the way that we film, but also even the equipment that we film on. So by using fairly simple editing techniques, by using very little glamour footage, it creates a video that you subconsciously, when you watch it, think that that's like your friend's video, right? It's not a scripted TV show. It's natural. It takes some more preparation to create that than people realize. But if I go way back in terms of the team, one of probably the best things that happened in terms of making this a business was that I think back in 2012, I started working with then friend, now of course almost business partner in it, a chap called Mark, and he had a background more in journalism. So his background was more being a tech writer. He was familiar with the world of media events and going to the big expo shows and talking to people. And he believed in the future of video as a platform to do this through, and effectively made all the introductions for me to pretty much every car company you could imagine. So it's not like it just suddenly started, but that meant that I could go on an event with BMW. I could go on an event with Jaguar. I could go on an event with, eventually, up through the supercar companies to the hypercar companies. So it grew over time. So Mark and I have been working together now for over 10 years, which is crazy. We have a team from the Shmee150 side now of, hard to say with people who are kind of part-time, but 6 or 7 people to run everything. Because to film everything, to edit everything, to publish across every platform, to manage all of the brand partnerships, it takes time. It's if you try and do it as a one-man band, you can only put out one video a week because you're doing so much else. Every big global corporate that you work with whether that's a consultancy gig or a presentation gig at one of their events, or whether it's a branded piece of content that we're sharing. There are contracts, there's plans, there's discussing deliverables, there's signing it all off, there's producing the reports afterwards to show what you did. That all takes a lot of time,
Right.
And you need a team to do that. There's certainly a massive value to keeping very lean relative, because as soon as you have too many chefs in the kitchen, you don't have the mobility. So for traveling, we need to be very, very 2 people, maybe 3 or 4 max, so that we can make a move very quickly. Because it's also, in some ways, I often liken what we do to being the editor of a newspaper. You have some stories you bank because there's no time relevance. You've got them in reserve. You've got something amazing you can pull out. But it can be the lead up to publish time and a new story comes in and you have to adapt to that. Right. You have to suddenly say, right, change your plan. This is what we're doing, and go for it. And I think it's quite hard to understand that until you're living that. But luckily, the kind of whole team setup that we have, everybody kind of gets it. So if I turn around and say, right, change your plan, we're going somewhere else tomorrow, it tends to go okay.
But it is. I remember when you came to do the first video that you did with us, because if I'm not mistaken, you shot 2. It is you with the camera, though, right? So I mean, the artistic, the storyline, the story, the content really is all you, right? You may have somebody in the back end that's
for sure.
helping with other
It's
stuff,
me that writes the script for my videos, and then technically you are at the end of the day, you're not only the director, the presenter, you're also the sound guy, you're also the lighting guy, you're the kind of everything, right?
And you were doing it off a camcorder, right? I don't know if you're doing that anymore.
Nowadays, we're basically filming on a mobile phone.
Yeah,
that's the crazy thing.
But I think, if I'm not mistaken, 2019, and I think you told me that you bought a lot of them because they were...
Because occasionally they get put in places where they get run over by cars.
Right, I remember you telling me that.
I've actually got... Because I've kept my own little museum. I've got every camera that I've ever used for a YouTube video.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So I've got my stockpile of about 10 different handy cams and countless action cameras and things. Yeah. All the stuff that's fallen off cars and got smashed over the years. It's part and parcel, right? But that was the same thing. The reason I kept filming with handy cams all the way up until quite recently was the relatability of it.
Yeah.
The fact that I'm not trying to mess with funky lenses and have different effects and things, because I was trying to create content that is completely natural to watch. It just feels like your friend has sent you a WhatsApp video, just sent you something to have a look at. And it's kind of subconscious, but it's very carefully considered from our end to work out how to do it. And I think people don't necessarily understand that, which is partly by design, because if everybody understood it when viewing the video, it would lose some of that. I'm not saying it's inauthentic, because it's not. Everything is very real in terms of the excitement of what we're trying to share on the video, but it would change the way things were perceived a little bit.
Yeah, but I think, having known you for a while now, whether camera's on or camera's off, it's still you. Yeah. And I think that's the authenticity that comes across. Like you're saying, it's like watching your friend actually tell you a story about the car. And I think it's not something that you backed into. It's your personality that you didn't doctor, at least my opinion, to be able to do that on camera. And I think that's part of the success.
Yeah, and one of the cool things about that is that there are many people now who have seen videos I've created for 10 to 15 years. And if you can think about that, people who were teenagers, perhaps when they started watching my videos, who are now approaching 30, it is in a strange way that I've kind of been a friend in their lives, something kind of consistent for a long time in their lives.
I was 20 when I saw your first video.
Yeah, were you? But you know what I mean? It's actually really cool. It's really cool that I receive stories from people who talk about that and who will reference a car I filmed years ago, and that will have been like a defining moment in their life. They saw something and they were like, right, I'm going to work hard because I want to achieve that, or I want to maybe one day own one of those cars or go to that place or something like that. And it's always amazing to me how these kind of videos actually do a lot more than you realize. It's in terms of that inspiration for people, in terms of people being able to see my journey and to see, what I went from. I went from cycling around London, like I say, with my BMW 1 Series to the cars that I'm lucky enough to own now in what is literally my dream garage. But not even just that. By creating content that's very positive about a topic that people get, really attached to, it's also something that can create like a reliever of stress for other people watching. If somebody's having a hard time, and I do receive messages from people who, have been through something difficult, and they'll watch something like the videos I create because it's uplifting, because it's positive, because it gives them something to look forward to. And sometimes that can be really quite heartwarming, quite like you realize that it's actually quite powerful. It's not just making a video to show off something. It's way deeper than that.
Yeah, I don't think you realize, I mean, you do, but I think in general, people don't realize the amount of influence that you actually have. I mean, run through all of the numbers that you've had, right? The millions of views, the billion views here, etc. There is a lot of influence. So with what you put out, and you put out tremendous stuff, there's a lot of responsibility, though, right?
Oh, there's a lot of responsibility.
So if somebody is a true quote-unquote influencer, which you look up influencer, I'm sure we'll find your picture in the dictionary, right? There is a responsibility to be able to be careful what message you're actually putting out.
For sure. One of the things I try very carefully to respect the audience, basically. I try to be very careful with this because you want to give a good impression. You have very impressionable viewers,
right?
People who are watching, who are really like going to learn and follow what they see,
right.
Especially youngsters. So it's very important to, like I say, respect that, and I think to give the right impression, to do things that other people. I'm losing my words to get this right, but to do things that you would want other people to do.
Right.
And I think, for example, if you start bickering and being a child online, you're saying that's okay, but that for society it's not.
Right.
We should look after others well. We should respect each other. And as a creator, you need to respect your viewer in the same way. You need to think that everything you're putting out is giving an impression. So, for example, I don't want to run around swearing on the camera every 5 seconds because it's not, I think for humans, it's better if we're nice to each other and we kind of look after each other.
Exactly. No, and we're joking. With the amount of viewers you have, you could swing the presidential election that's coming up. I'm teasing. We won't talk about politics at all. But it is. I think it is important, and I think and wholesomeness is the wrong word because it sounds like in this day and age, if you're wholesome, it's almost a negative connotation. But I think you're spot on. You have to have the right approach and to be able to go ahead, those people that are impressionable, to see what's there. And that's one thing that you've been 100% consistent about. So I think that's important. You've seen a lot of people, obviously, through all of these years that have attained a level, whether by themselves, somebody helped them along, whatever it may be, to attain a certain level, to be able to have certain luxury supercars, etc. Is there any commonality that you've noticed in terms of all of those people, or do you think all of them are just all different? And I'm kind of going for our audience, right? Because I get a lot of questions, well, what's the habit of being successful and things of that nature. Do you see any commonality in the people that you deal with?
100%. The main commonality between people who have self-made their circumstances is the hardworking attitude. I think there's no specific commonality of a specific career, which is a question I get asked a lot. What should I do to one day own a? And I think that's kind of the wrong attitude.
Yeah.
It's important that you do something that you're good at and that you enjoy, because if you do, then you naturally will work harder at it. But I think the main thing that certainly from people who have generated first generation wealth is that kind of they took a risk and they worked very hard at it. That's easily the thing that you see in common. Obviously there are so many different industries, and I mean even in recent years we've seen the rise of the digital coin, the crypto world and NFTs and all of that, and I don't really understand it properly, and I think a lot of people don't really understand it properly, but that's created a new generation of people who took a risk and invested in something, and it worked out. And even that, I'm sure, once you start learning, there's probably a lot more studying, analytics, understanding, digging into things than meets the eye at first. So same kind of story. I think that's probably the main thing.
Yeah. Now, what does Tim or Shmee do when he's not doing something with cars?
You mean there's a life without cars?
There may be. I know maybe you have to take the car to what you're doing, but are there other hobbies? Now I heard you were a great skier at one point.
Yeah,
do you still do that? Or?
Used to be. And do you know what's funny? Back when I was really into skiing, late teenager, going on holidays, vacations with friends, I did think I might try and figure out how to run a business that had something to do with skiing.
Well, see, there
and I
you
do
go.
often wonder, if I had started making videos of ski events, would that have worked? You never know with this stuff, right? I was lucky to be at the beginning of the wave, which I did with cars and keep riding on it. In fact, my first ever YouTube video was actually because I had just bought a new camera to go and film an upcoming ski trip.
Oh, okay.
That was, and I was just testing it. And I was filming cars because that was what I had near my home to go and make a video with, which is kind of funny. So, I used to love skiing. I had a pretty bad accident, as everybody who spends too much time on skis does eventually. And that kind of put an end to being able to do it too much. In fact, the last time I went skiing was 4 and a bit years ago, which is kind of painful for me to think, because I used to go for 4 different trips a season.
Right.
I think that for me, at least, I'm so lucky that the mixture of things that I love fall very well together in what I now do as a job, in the sense of course, cars and everything to do with cars, whether that's being at a track day, test driving something new, driving an amazing road somewhere, which can link me on to the second one, which is travel. I get to see some amazing places. I get to meet some incredible people, both on the car company side. Just a couple of days ago, I spent a day with Horacio Pagani, which is kind of as you do, which is still for me really? Does that really happen? But not even just the guys who are leading our industry, but also at every level of it, people who are working in the OEMs to produce parts, components, assemble cars, all the way through to the other end, the car spotters and photographers. We all have a passion at the end of the day, which pulls everyone together. So we've got the travel side, but also the, I'm going to say, digital side. I enjoy the tech side, the gadgets, the concept of creating content that you're sharing online, combining that also with the analytics, the charts, the numbers. I think spending a lot of my life staring at metrics and performance of content has been a very big factor in the success of the growth of what I've done, because I've intentionally followed trends, spotted a change, adapted, adjusted. So that's always been a very big part of making sure that everything's, let's say, optimized. But once you bring together cars, travel, people, tech, it's kind of all the things I love. Sorry, I've gone off on a massive tangent answering the question. But if you ask me what would I do as a hobby, what would be my dream vacation, to go on a road trip through Switzerland and Italy.
Right.
Well, I get to do that quite often and and call it a job.
Yeah.
So it's kind of great. I think there comes a time where you've done everything. Not quite literally everything, but certainly 10 years ago, most things I did, it was the first time. Whereas now, most events I go to, I've probably been to most years for the last decade, or most places that I would go and drive, famous things like Pacific Coast Highway, or each of the many famous passes in Italy and Switzerland, around Europe. There are places that I've been countless times, so it's never going to be the same as it was the first time. But luckily, with changing cars, always driving with a new vehicle in the same, even if it's the same place, and with changing, I guess, ideas behind it, the types of content, and then throw in going to some new places, like recently driving up to the Arctic Circle in Sweden for the first time. That's, again, it's something new, and there are many more of those. I've got a lot of places I would like to go still.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you ever feel as though you're burnt out? But through the conversation, you've actually tipped me off on a lot of things that I see how you actually set yourself up where you're not burnt out. You know, one of the things that you said, if something goes bad, I don't panic. You step back, you actually take a look and say, okay, how am I going to solve this problem? And when I was thinking, okay, you're constantly putting out this video, doesn't it get monotonous? And what you just said kind of put a light bulb in my head is, well, that's why Shmee or Tim's not burnt out. Because there's so many different facets, and all the facets are something that you enjoy. So you enjoy the technology part, you enjoy the travel part, you enjoy all those things. So everything tends to be different. And I think the other thing that's actually nice with cars is every year there's a new model of something.
Exactly.
And it's constantly something different and changing. And I think that's just a fresh approach. So,
And even new companies that come up, you know, new opportunities to get involved in things. It's something I get asked a lot is that, like, have you ever felt burnt out? And I think a couple of reasons for me that hasn't been is firstly the whole getting into it before it was what we know of it now. You know, I was creating content in the way that I do now because I enjoyed doing it long before it became the business that I had to do. And I did it for many years like that. But also, in a way, being able to almost differentiate, let's say, Tim and my private life with Shmee and the YouTube life, you could say. You know, I know that it's the audience know what I tell the audience and what they see and what I am okay sharing. And, you know, if I have a day with my family, of course, it's not on video. You know, some people like to vlog their lives, but I like to have that differentiation, which very much helps with that whole, like, you know, if you work a 9 to 5, right, you get to 5, close your laptop screen, don't think about it again. And that's very hard to do if you run your own business. But if you can create a differentiation, you can create a mental split for yourself of just like, right, don't worry about it right now. It really helps to keep yourself, you know, sane through it all and not go too crazy with it. Because it sounds strange to say, but it is very hard knowing that a lot of people, well, I shouldn't say, it is very hard when a lot of people know who you are, because it changes your ability to go out and walk down the street in a normal way, or you never know when you're sitting in a restaurant having a conversation who's at the table next to you listening, right? You've got to be careful what you say, kind of thing. And that is completely true. So you do have to really change your lifestyle a lot, change what you do a lot. But, you know, getting to go to so many places and meet so many people, it's sound like a broken record saying the same things, but it really feels so lucky to be able to do that you work through everything else. And I enjoy the highs of what I do so much that there would have to be some pretty big lows to even dent the highs.
And I know when we've gone out, you're always getting noticed, and I am not comparing myself to you at all, but a funny story of what you said about changing things. So obviously I do consulting, and we started doing some Instagram, so a very small community in the car community, and got noticed at a couple of places. And part of the consulting that I do is the My Focus model. And fitness is extremely important. I was visiting my son out in Arizona, and I was going to go to Shake Shack. Well, I preach against Shake Shack and garbage, so we won't tell people what we ate today, right? But it was funny because I'm thinking I'm going to go to Shake Shack. Well, I was reading some of the comments, and a couple people said, "Hey, we saw you in Kierland Mall, but we didn't want to come up and bother you." So as I was grabbing the handle of the Shake Shack, I'm thinking, if somebody sees me coming in here, they're going to think I'm a hypocrite. So I actually went to Safeway and got some turkey. So for you, I could imagine, because that's one person that noticed me, and I know every time we go out, somebody notices you. But it's true, you're under the microscope, right?
And you know, obviously, you don't want everybody to constantly let you know if they've seen you and whatnot, but it's great to have lots of positive interactions, but it does change, you know, the way you can do things. Normally you'd go to a restaurant and have a dinner with a work colleague or something, and you'd talk about things.
Right.
Because nobody around is listening or going to share anything back. And as soon as you put yourself in the shoes of, wait a second, the guy at that table.
Yeah, it keeps looking.
Yeah, like, what have I said in the last half an hour? You learn it. But no, like you say, it's also sometimes trying not to steal the thunder. You know, if you've got a really exciting video coming up, you
Right.
kind of want to keep under wraps what it's going to be until the day you're ready to share it.
No, without a doubt.
There's a lot of interesting dynamics and elements of a career like this that you don't really understand until you're living it, until you're taking that in every day.
So Tim, you're in every area of social media: Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok. Have you thought about doing a podcast?
I think it's interesting to talk podcasts as we're recording right now. And of course, over the years, I've joined many different podcasters and had some really interesting conversations. It's something I've been asked quite a few times, but ultimately time is the biggest shortfall. I wish there was a 25th hour in every day sometimes. It would make life a lot easier. But
the way you travel, there usually is, though. So.
Yeah, it's true. Today especially. No, I think one of the interesting things I've changed a bit more recently with my videos is, I say recently, a good few years now, is involving people that I'm visiting. So almost like a mini podcast while we're driving a car or something. It's kind of a crossover of the video format with understanding a little bit more about that person, whether it's walking around a car collection with them, talking about their stories, why did they purchase this car, what does it mean to them, or going out for a drive and just letting the conversation flow wherever it flows. So it's kind of become in some ways podcast-like, runs for 30 minutes, right? 30, 40 minutes. So you enter into those dialogues, those conversations. So it's almost like a different take on it. It's a dynamic take on it.
Yeah, it's like a driving podcast, or
quite literally. And I have sometimes wondered, should we just record those conversations even longer? Because sometimes a very natural chat about cars can be the most interesting thing when you have two people who have a passion in common, just talking about it. Because it's you get that through the video, and it's why I try and almost, because I've got to be honest, my viewers have seen so much of me. They know every opinion I have about everything. Some people who have regularly watched videos will know what I'm going to say about a car before I'm there, because they know what my likes and dislikes are. But bringing another person into it is totally unknown, totally unpredictable. And I love, especially when, it's quite a funny thing to think about, but when somebody's super nervous, I've never done a video before, I don't know what to say, they're normally the best people on camera because it comes across so naturally. It's not staged, it's not rehearsed, it's not planned. They didn't know what to expect, so they didn't write out their script before you turned on the camera on them. They were just, camera's on, let's go. Yeah. And I actually really, really enjoy that. So it's almost like a different take on a podcast.
Yeah, I actually didn't think about that, but yeah, you're right. You actually incorporate a podcast, or can incorporate even longer podcasts each time you do a car visit or a car review. Oh. What do you think? And we ask this question to most of our guests. We do it at the end, actually, to all of them. Obviously, tremendous career, tremendous success. You kind of, like you said, you were almost the grandfather of YouTube, right? You started when YouTube started, and you were the first one that started a lot of these things. What is one of your habits that brought you to this point that you think, if I didn't have this habit, I wouldn't be where I'm at today?
Being too obsessive with details. Being too perfectionist, making sure that everything I ever said on a video is always factually accurate, whether it's the horsepower figure of a car. I would reshoot long clips of videos to make sure that the details were right. But it means that because of that history, if somebody's watching a video from me, they know that it's correct information. Mm-hmm. It's not just how cool is this, it's an engineering explanation or a kind of balance, because I try not to go too deep into things that somebody who's casually viewing would be lost. But I think that whole mindset of being really about the details, it's the same in terms of looking in the analytics and seeing what small detail made this change, and should I do something differently? Would the channel perform better if I do a different detail? So a habit of spending too much time on every little detail. Right. Arguably, when anything gets to a certain scale, you need to stop micromanaging every little bit, right? But certainly in terms of launching things, that was a big part of it.
Oh, fantastic. Tim, it was a pleasure having you on. Always great seeing you. I hope to see you again, maybe next time in Arizona.
For sure. Likewise.
Or Florida.